Anyway, he told me, you need to have a talk with your daughter because the way she dresses makes my son feel uncomfortable. And I was like, okay. And so I did. I had to talk to my daughter. And I said, hey, the way you dress, there's nothing wrong with it. Keep dressing how you dress. As long as you feel comfortable and confident, dress how you want to. It's your body, your decision. You're absolutely not ever responsible for anybody's thoughts, no matter what.
Hey friends, and welcome back to Post-Mormon Parenting. Today we have a very special guest, Josh Nielsen. Josh is a dad from Utah, and he has 4 kids. And we're really excited to have him on to share his story, his journey into post-Mormon parenting, and what that's looking like for him. Before we begin, I do want to give some content warnings. We won't be talking about anything really graphic, but we will be mentioning domestic abuse, suicidal ideation and attempts, as well as sexual assault. So without further ado, Josh, can you go ahead and introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, my name is Josh. I'm a single father. I have 3 kids from when I was married. They are 14 years old, a girl, a 12-year-old girl, an 8-year-old boy. And then after I got divorced, I got in another relationship and had a girl from that one. And she's 3 years old right now, and I have sole custody of her. So I'm a full-time single father. And my youngest is my bitter fruit, which is referring to the talk that Elder Christofferson gave in October last year. She was born out of wedlock, and she was born through surrogacy, but she's the sweetest fruit ever.
Love that. Thank you. And you're an ex-Mormon.
I'm an ex-Mormon. I'm gradually moving more towards the term of post-Mormon, only because people hear ex-Mormon and they just assume we're bitter and angry. Yeah. I've been through that, and sometimes I still get angry, but I am moving forward and healing. So I'm post-Mormon, agnostic. I live in Utah, in Davis County, Utah, and just doing the best I can, be a good person, be a good daddy to my kids.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Let's dive right into your Mormon story. Talk about like what your childhood was like and how you grew up.
My parents were still in the temple. They were both active, believing Mormon. My dad served a mission. As far as I know, he was never really abusive of my mom. He did yell at her. He was emotionally and verbally abusive, but not physically abusive with her. Mm-hmm. But he was physically abusive with me and my siblings, especially my brothers and I. He would beat the shit out of us. Sorry.
You can say that's okay.
Okay, he would beat the shit out of us all the time, just for regular things like running through the house, laughing, being normal kids. We were all scared to death of him. We couldn't really be ourselves around him because we were all so scared. I had a lot of negative experience with family dinners. I never enjoyed family dinners either because he was always there. Got fired a lot, called in a lot, quit a lot. So needless to say, our family was very financially strapped. We were probably, I can't confirm this for sure because I don't know what the poverty level is, but I'm guessing we were probably below the poverty level. For the first 7 years of my life, we lived in a trailer, manufactured home, mobile home. I had to share a room with all 3 of my brothers, so I didn't have a whole lot of privacy. My sister shared a room, and then my mom and dad shared the 3rd bedroom. Just this tiny little manufactured home for the first 7 years of my life. We went to the DI a lot, Deseret Industries, for those that don't know what the DI is. Mm-hmm. It's basically a thrift store owned and operated by the church. It's a good program. It's definitely a good program, but as a kid, it's embarrassing to have to get all our clothes from the DI and never having nice new stuff, always having secondhand hand-me-downs. Also, we went to the Bishop's Storehouse. For those that don't know what that is, it's like a grocery store where you can get all the essentials, meat, milk, cheese, all the staples, some extra things, ice cream, stuff like that. You can get toilet paper, toilet bathroom items, but it's all for free because it's paid for by assistance from the church. I'm not sure if it's paid for with tithing or fast offerings, but that's a good program too. It helps out people that are financially struggling. Mm-hmm. And we had to go there a lot throughout my childhood. So I've come to really love the Deseret Industries beef stew. That was one of my favorite things there. It was delicious. But
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Yeah.
Also super embarrassing though, whenever we had friends over and they go get a snack or whatever, and they open our pantry and they see Deseret on all the stuff.
Yeah.
Like that, and Yeah, so that was kind of embarrassing, but it definitely helped us get through some rough times.
Mm-hmm.
And along the line of that financial stuff, there were a few times where we had Christmases where we had Secret Santa. Somebody in the ward would come and bring us a whole bunch of presents, and we didn't know who it was. So that was awesome.
That's so sweet.
One of the great things about being in the church does a lot of good, a lot of harm, but a lot of good.
Yes.
One of the great things is there were nice people in the ward that did help us out where they could. As far as my relationship with my parents, so me and my me and my siblings, we all were pretty reliant on our mom for the most part because our dad was always gone with work. I mean, even though he quit a lot of jobs, for a while he was a truck driver, so he was out over the road driving for a while. There were probably times where he was gone overnight. I honestly don't remember him being around a whole lot when I was a kid, but when he was home, it was miserable. And I hated when he was home because he was super abusive.
Mm-hmm.
I would always ask my mom, when is dad going to be home? And that was so, it wasn't because I was excited. It was so that I could make plans to be gone or be busy in my room or something so that I wouldn't have to be around him.
Mm-hmm.
And we were always happy whenever he was gone at work or whatever. It seemed like he hated us, really. So needless to say, I never felt any love from him. I was terrified of him. I was living in fear, scared to death of him. And because I didn't know, I mean, I knew what he was capable of, but I didn't know what his limit was. One incident that I'll never forget, this was very hurtful to me. I'm over it, but I still remember it. When I was 10 years old, I used to like to tinker with stuff. I would take stuff apart, see how it works. And I took a radio, I took it apart, put the speakers on two separate sides of the rooms so that my brothers on that side, I still had to share a room with my brothers. This was in a different house, but still had to share a room. My brothers were on that side, I was on this side. I put speakers on two separate sides so we could listen to music at the same time. My dad came home from work. He saw the speakers, he saw the wires, he started ripping the wires down, and he starts pounding on me with his fists. And while he's pounding on me, he's saying, "You're so stupid. Why do you do stupid things like this? Why do you got to do stupid things like this? You're such an idiot. You're really stupid." All while he's pounding on me with his fists. So verbal abuse, psychological abuse, physical abuse. And yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more that happened, a lot worse than that. None of the neighbors knew. Nobody at church knew. He was great at hiding things though. So at church, he seemed like a normal, good guy.
So can you tell us a little bit about how that translated to your church life? Like, what was church like for you as a kid? What was it like for your family? Did your dad hold callings in the church? Anything like that?
The church teaches that families are forever. Mm-hmm. And you go to church, and for the most part, you see happy families. Everyone seems so happy and loving. You see kids sitting next to their dad, giving them hugs. Everyone seems so happy at church. And for me, it was hurtful to see all the happy families at church because how my family was. Like, we were not a happy family by any means. I did not enjoy going to church at all as a kid. It wasn't a safe place for me because I had all the abuse at home, but my dad went to church with us. So it's not like I could get an escape from him. And at church, he acted like a different person. However, there were times at church where he would like whisper under his breath and chastise us even at church. And I'm pretty sure we even got some spankings and things at church too, like in classrooms or in the bathroom or whatever. Because of the financial stuff, we moved around a lot. Like, I went to at least 4 or 5 different schools. So needless to say, I didn't have many close friends outside of church or even in church for that matter. My dad, he served several leadership callings. He was a Sunday school teacher at one point. He was in the high priest group. He was called to be in the bishopric. He was a ward clerk. So it's like, where the hell is the power of discernment there? Mm-hmm. That's really a shelf item for me. I didn't think about it at the time because I was just a kid, but looking back, it's really weird that none of the bishops or stake presidents or anyone ever had any idea what kind of person he is, and that the abuse went on for so long until I was 15 years old. But even before I was born, how did it go on so long and no bishop, no stake president ever had any idea in any of his interviews, his temple recommend interviews, any interviews to give him a leadership position? Especially, you would think if there were true power of discernment, they would be able to pick up on that. Mm-hmm. You know, maybe God would tell him this person has problems, he needs help. that never happened.
Yeah. And for anyone in the audience who's wondering what we're talking about, the power of discernment is supposed to be one of the spiritual gifts given by the Holy Ghost. And it's supposed to be extra strong with men who are in priesthood leadership positions,
Right.
especially when they are interviewing members one-on-one, which happens all the time. Every member gets interviewed regularly. That male priesthood leader is supposed to be able to have the spirit of discernment to understand, like, is this person lying to me? Are they trying to cover up something? I hear what they're saying, but like, what is the spirit telling me about them? You know? And so it just goes to show, like, it's complete bunk. It's not really a gift that really exists, at least not among them.
Right. And the bishops are told, I've even had bishops tell me this themselves. Bishops are told that they are the judge in Israel.
Uh-huh.
What kind of judge lets someone like that pass through the system for so long?
Right.
So that was definitely a shelf item for me.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as church, I did not enjoy church ever because it was not an escape. It was not spiritual. We had to just try to put on the appearance of being a good, happy, functional family, even though we had so much dysfunction. Even on Sundays, right after church, we would come home from church and he would want to take a nap, and he would make all of us have quiet time. And there were several times we got beat with the belt because we woke him up from his nap.
Mm-hmm.
So even on Sunday, like every day of the week that when he was home, when he wasn't at work, he was just super abusive. We were all terrified of him. With Scouts, there was a overnight thing, a father-son overnight thing. And my own dad didn't make himself available for just a one night, not even a week Scout camp, just one overnighter. He wouldn't make himself available for just one of those. So this was when I was 10 or 11 years old. My Scout leader at the time, who incidentally has the same first name as my own dad, he took me to the overnighter because he didn't have any sons that were old enough to go at the time. He went with me as my stand-in father, and I had a hell of a better time with my Scout leader as my stand-in father than I would have had with my real dad. So that was
good.
awesome. Once in a while, I had a few good adults in the church that I could look up to that did help me feel important. And I desperately needed that because my own dad was horrible. He's a monster.
Right. Yeah. That's so nice. I think I hear a lot about people who have a rough home life, and my home life was kind of rough too, not nearly as much as yours, but church, was often a safe haven. We had mentors there, we had community there, we had friends there. And so that's good that you were at least able to get like that help from the church, not only financially and with food, but also with like that Scout leader, and every now and then a really good Sunday school teacher or maybe young men leader that is like really helpful and impactful. And like you said, there's so much harm that the church does, and there's some good there too. So
right.
Everyone recognize that.
Looking back, I realized that I never felt love from so-called God, from Heavenly Father, Sky Daddy. I like to call him Sky Daddy. Never felt any love from him. Like everyone says they're excited to go to heaven or the afterlife or whatever. They're excited to be with God, to feel God's love, to be in his presence.
Mm-hmm.
None of that was ever appealing to me. I never felt any love from him. In fact, most of the time I felt abandoned. I felt like he wasn't even there. And my motive for being good, it was never to want to get to heaven, to be in the presence of God. It was only to avoid going to hell. So I was living in fear. I was trying my best to be good out of fear of going to hell. I hear the word God and I just think it's some entity that's there, and I got to be careful not to piss him off. Got to be careful to do my best. Like the smallest little mistake is going to make it so that I could go to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And heaven never seemed exciting to me. I'm like, if I get there, I get there. That's cool. I just don't want to go to hell. I was so terrified of going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not perfect by any means, but as a kid, I was doing the best I could. And I think I did pretty damn good. I think I was a great kid. I know for sure my mom was super proud of me. And maybe she doesn't play favorites. Maybe she tells all of us this. There was definitely some point where she told me I was her favorite kid. Or her best kid.
My mom definitely does that.
Yeah, he followed all the rules, did what was expected of me. By the way, I never felt happiness with any of this. It was always stress, always a constant feeling of not being good enough, no matter how hard I try. One of my bishops in the interview was like, well, there's not only sins of commission, there's also sins of omission.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me a whole other layer of not feeling good enough, because then I felt like he actually told me, for example, if you're not reading the scriptures enough, if you're not going to church enough, somehow I go, great, now there's more stuff I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
So in order to avoid judgment and shame, you basically have to lie and act like you're upholding these super high expectations,
Mm-hmm.
which can do major damage on your mental health if you're lying about these things. And it's not like you're lying because you just want to lie about them. It's like you pretty much have to avoid embarrassment, shame, and severe punishment.
That was really, I think, really insightful to recognize that when there's too much at stake, like there's huge punishments, that's just unfathomable. I cannot face that. So I'm going to have to lie my way out of this. It reminds me of that old saying that strict parents raise good liars. When you're overly strict and you have like really harsh punishments in place, kids are just going to learn how to be better liars. And I've seen it, in people that I know close to me. They got to be really, really good at lying. So that's another good takeaway for us in post-Mormon parenting, is remembering these lessons, that like those things that the church did to us or shamed us into, we don't want to be perpetuating that with our kids. We don't want to be shaming our kids into good behavior. We don't want to be beating our kids into good behavior. We don't want to be giving them the fear of hell in order for them to have good behavior. And we definitely don't want to have so many punishments or be too strict or have things that are too harsh, and that just makes them to be really good at lying to us. So all good lessons to keep in mind. Thank you for that. Next question. So up until now, we pretty much covered your life from childhood till your teenage years. Walk us through a little bit, like right after high school graduation.
Right after high school, I took a year of some computer classes at the Applied Technical College here in Utah. They do offer associate's degree there, but it's not a regular university. It's where you go at your own pace. And at this point, I was inactive at church. Like I was hardly ever going to church. Now that my dad was out of the picture, I never had to go to church anymore. My mom was okay with me. She was disappointed. It was obvious she was super disappointed and heartbroken, but she never made me go to church. I still was expected to go to seminary, but I didn't go to church. Something that was really interesting, kind of a shelf item, not a negative shelf item, but still a shelf item, makes you wonder. When I played in a band, right after high school for only 6 months, but it was really cool. I got to actually be myself, have fun, playing guitar for a band. That was super fun. We played 5 shows in 6 months, so we went at it hard and fast.
Wow.
And all the members of my band, they were all Baptist. I don't know what denomination of Baptist, but they all went to the same church here in Utah. And we would have our band practice in the basement of their church. So that was weird to me. It was cool, but it was weird, the idea of playing heavy metal and hard rock music in the basement of a church. One time on the way to band practice, the bass player was talking about the Old Testament, and he said something about, man, that Old Testament God was a mean son of a bitch. I thought that was super blasphemous. I didn't say anything. I thought it was funny, but I thought it was also super blasphemous. I started hanging out with this girl at work, and like the first or second time we hung out, she was like wanting to make out with me. We were making out and stuff, and she made it obvious that she wanted to have sex. And so we were doing the heavy petting, and she did the oral sex, and she was pressuring me. And deep inside, I was holding on to the belief that I should not have sex until marriage. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I need to quit. I need to not do this. I need to not allow this to happen. I need to stop. And I told her I was using the excuse that I'm saving sex till marriage because I want to do it only with someone I'm actually in love with. And so then she gets mad. She's like, well, so we got to be dating for a while before you'll have sex with me. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, maybe. And basically, I really didn't want to because of my beliefs of saving it till marriage. And it was more religious than emotional. I mean, emotionally, I did want to wait till I found someone I loved, but my main motive was the religion, that it's an absolute horrible, abominable sin to have premarital sex. But I got caught up in the moment. Even though I didn't want to, I caved. I gave in. It was a moment of weakness. She pressured me into it. She wasn't physically forceful, but she was definitely psychologically and emotionally forceful. I would say it was abusive, the
Mm-hmm.
way she pressured me into it. It was definitely against my will. I didn't want to, but I did because I'm not saying I did want to. I didn't want to, but I did go through with it because she was emasculating me. And she also threatened, she's like, well, if we don't have sex, then I really don't care to hang out with you anymore. And we're done.
Mm-hmm.
And I was starting to kind of get feelings for her. So I didn't want to just like never see her again. So I basically gave in to her because she was being coercive, and I just got caught up in the moment so
Mm-hmm.
much that I couldn't really say no, even though I kind of tried. I was telling her I want to wait, but I gave in anyway. And then immediately afterwards, it felt great physically. It felt amazing. But after she left that night, I immediately felt dirty. I felt used. I felt disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because not only did I let myself down by caving into what I was trying to hold on to, but I immediately felt the spiritual shame and guilt and disappointment from God.
Mm-hmm.
I was worried that this was going to make it so that I might go to hell. And it was just one of the most horrible feelings ever. Like I totally felt used. I felt like trash. We had sex the one time at my place, and then she wanted me to go to her house, thinking that I would feel more comfortable doing it again there, and I didn't. And just like she said, because I didn't a second time, she lost interest and didn't want to hang out with me ever again. So
Mm.
she totally used me. She stopped hanging out with me because I wasn't willing to keep having sex with her.
That's so gutting.
Yeah. Anyway, so I didn't because I wasn't going to church at the time. I didn't even think about confessing to a bishop because I wasn't going to church. So what's the point? I don't talk to a bishop about anything. Why
Mm-hmm.
should I go confess something when I'm not even going to church anymore? Uh, but I mean, I didn't talk to anybody about it. Couldn't talk to my closest brother. Couldn't talk to my mom. There was really nobody I could talk to about it because I was so embarrassed and ashamed. And so it was hard. It was really hard to deal with
Mm-hmm.
emotionally and psychologically. Even though I didn't care about the church much, even though I wasn't going to church, deep down inside I felt like I had damned myself to hell. God was disappointed in me. There was no chance of me going to heaven for this.
That's so understandable. Unfortunately, you didn't have a safe person to talk to about it because that safe person could have maybe helped you understand like this wasn't enthusiastic consent in any way. This was coercion.
Yeah.
And so it's not something that you just like voluntarily wanted to do and did. It makes a big difference.
Right.
And if you'd been able to have a safe person to talk to, you might have been able to get a lot of that guilt off of your chest and not have to carry that around for so long like you did.
Right.
And I think that's such a huge tragedy too. And another good takeaway that we can remember for our kids too, that stuff's going to happen. We can't protect our kids from things like that happening necessarily, but we can be the safe person that they can talk to about it afterward. That's so huge and could really, really make a huge difference for somebody.
Right.
So thank you for sharing that. That's really hard. It's really rough.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm sorry for the church's teachings in that too, that made you feel so much worse.
Yeah.
Just like so much salt in the wound, so much insult to injury, making you feel so much worse about something that happened that really you were coerced into that you didn't even want to have happen. So,
Right.
yeah.
And like I couldn't even talk to my mom about it. And my mom's a great person. I love her.
Mm-hmm.
I want to quickly validate my mom. If she sounds bad or horrible at all, it's not her fault. She was doing the best damn job she could. She was an amazing mom. The church causes people to, this is again an example of the people are not perfect. The church is. That's totally wrong because my mom was amazing. Best mom ever. She was doing the best damn job she could. But because of the church, this horrible, broken, flawed, dysfunctional system makes her feel in her heart and think in her mind that getting to heaven is the most important thing ever, no matter what. And all this stuff she was taught ever since being 2 or 3 years old, all the way throughout her life. She's 60 years old now, 61 years old now. Deep indoctrination from the church. She's just doing the best job she can. She was doing what she thought was best. So it's not her being a horrible person. It's her living up to her beliefs. She was doing the best she could, and she did really damn good. She taught me to be kind, honest, compassionate, empathetic. But the church doesn't have the best spin on those things. And those things can be learned anywhere outside of any church, and even better outside the church. Church does their own version of those things in a coercive, manipulative, shameful, high demand, high stress, high anxiety way. In 2004, I met this girl named Ava.
By the way, I just want to interrupt and say Ava is not her real name. We're not going to be using anybody's real names in this interview.
So I met her after she graduated. Back in the day of using MSN Messenger and AOL AIM chat.
Yes. Those were the days.
Yeah. She graduated in 2004, and it was sometime in the summer of 2004. So she was still, she was just barely 18 years old. And she was also raised Mormon. But at the time when I met her, like, she was not super strict, but she had a similar background as far as the church, where she hadn't drinking or smoked or any of that stuff. She believed in the church. She was kind of inactive, just going whenever. Her parents had been married in the temple, and her grandparents were kind of religious too, her aunts and uncles. So she came from a similar background religious wise.
Okay.
But she wanted to get married in the temple. We became more serious. She was talking about marriage. She was talking about kids. One of our dates, she actually proposed to me accidentally. She was like, we were on the swings, and she goes, "If I fall, will you marry me?" She meant to say catch me, but she said marry, because she was thinking about marriage.
His little Freudian slip.
Yeah, because the church teaches get married, have kids, become a mom, and do that as soon as possible when you're young. She was 18. She was already a ticking time bomb, right, according to the church. She was also okay with me not going on a mission, because her older brother hadn't gone on a mission. Her older brother was active from the church too. So we were dating, we became more serious. We got engaged on New Year's Eve, 2004. And the marriage, I'll get back to that in a second. I'm just gonna say real brief, the marriage was March 2005. So we only dated for 8 months, super short. Not near enough time to really learn each other, not really become comfortable with each other. It's super unhealthy not to live with somebody before you get married, and also not to explore them at least a little bit, to learn what their sexuality is like. And that's stuff you can't do if you're in the church. You're not allowed to live with somebody you're not married to. You're supposed to be a virgin until you get married. So it's like, how the hell are you supposed to figure out each other sexually, and even seeing if you can even stand living with each other?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something the church is doing totally wrong. They need to change that.
I've really come a long way with that myself too. I'm so just on the same page as you. I think I used to believe, because I was told over and over, that if you live together with somebody, no, that's going to ruin your relationship, because people start living together and then they break up, and that's going to absolutely sabotage your relationship. You can't do that. You have to just go straight to getting married. You have to go from barely knowing this person, like knowing them as much as you can in a very short amount of time, because you don't want to risk anything happening and not being worthy to go to the temple, right?
Right.
So you have to get to know this person as much as you can in a very short amount of time, and then just like take this gamble that maybe everything will just work out. Like President Spencer W. Kimball said, any righteous young woman and righteous young man can make it work if they're both committed, Yeah. Which is just like, yeah, sure. They can make it work. They can force it. They can work every single day and have a really hard time and a really hard relationship. Yeah. Or you can find someone that you're actually really compatible with by having informed consent, by educating yourself about what life might be like with this person. Are you really compatible? You get all the education you can about it, and then you can really make an informed decision. Anyway, yeah. So sorry, there's my rant. I think that's going to be something that I do differently with my kids also. Encouraging them to like maybe live with this person first before you commit your life and to raise kids with this person.
Yeah. You're not just going to go buy a car right away. You got to do a test drive first.
Good point.
So we were dating. We started to become serious. She wanted to get married in the temple. I didn't care whether or not I was going to get married in the temple. But it's what she wanted, so I knew I had to. So I had to start going back to church. I had to start becoming active, paying tithing, reading scriptures, going to church again, doing all the things. When I first started dating her, because I was inactive at church so long, and because of not going on a mission, I was only a teacher in priesthood quorum. So it's not like when you turn 16, you don't instantly become a priest. You have to actually be ordained a priest. No, I was a priest at that time, but I wasn't an elder. So there's two priesthoods, just real quick for those that don't know. There's the Aaronic priesthood, which is the lesser priesthood, where you're allowed to do things with the sacrament. You're allowed to go collect money from people doing fast offerings. You're even allowed to baptize as a priest in the Aaronic priesthood. And then there's the higher priesthood, which is the Melchizedek priesthood. That's the one where you're allowed to do more ordinance work, like confirming the Holy Ghost, administering blessings to people, all that kinds of stuff. And it's what's required when you go through the temple, which is also required for serving a mission. So normally, if I had gone on a mission, I would have been an elder at that point. I would have received the Melchizedek priesthood, but I didn't. So when I met Ava, I was just Aaronic priesthood, and I was just a priest, even though I was like 20 or 21 at this point. So that was probably embarrassing for her. But anyway, to get married in the temple, I knew I had to become an elder. So I had to have someone who's already an elder with the Melchizedek priesthood do a blessing to ordain the Melchizedek priesthood to me and make me elder. So my brother did that. And one thing that was really kind of weird with that specific event, Ava was there with me. It was Ava, my brother, and like a stake president, I think. And we just did it in one of the rooms at one of the stake conference centers after stake conference. Right after the blessing, the stake president, he's like, well, what do you think, Ava? You got yourself a nice new elder here, or something along those lines. He was basically putting me on a pedestal for being an elder. And it was super uncomfortable to me, super uncomfortable, because I have never, ever, ever felt like I had any kind of authority or power, even with the priesthood. I never thought I was better than anybody. The church is super patriarchal. Maybe that's another reason I had a problem with fitting in, was because I viewed women and girls as equal. The priesthood is not better than the Relief Society and the Young Women's and all that stuff. No. They need to be equal. I have always felt this way, especially even more so now. Maybe I'm a feminist at heart, but it was super weird to me to hear him say that and praise me and put me on a pedestal. It was super uncomfortable to me. I hated that he said that. It was just so weird. So I was ordained an elder, and we had to start taking temple prep classes. They call them temple prep classes, but they don't prepare you for shit.
No.
Not by the way. I would hope that someone out there has a better one than I had, but as far as I know, none of them tell you all the weird ritual stuff. And it is ritualistic, all the weird ritualistic stuff you do. You put on certain clothes that look really weird. And if any of this is too sacred for your viewers, you can edit this out. Too secret. The hat.
Yeah, no, I think just like there are certain things that we promised to never reveal.
Yeah.
And maybe those are things that we can leave out in order to be sensitive to the viewers. But no, like the clothing, we never promised to never reveal what the clothing was, why we wore it, what we did with it, where we went, what we talked about there, things that we said. Like we never promised to not reveal those things. So you're free to go. Go ahead. Okay.
So there's a hat that the guys wear. It's like round and stiff on the top. It looks like a baker's hat. It looks like a baker when you're wearing it. There's this weird.
That looks pretty silly.
Yeah, there's this weird gown type thing. It's called a robe, and like it goes over your shoulder, kind of like a toga. But you're not naked under this. You're wearing white clothes, white shirt, white pants, white tie, white socks, white shoes. Everything's got to be white and so pure.
Yes.
And there's the robe thing that's like a toga, and you have to switch from one shoulder to the other at some point during the endowments. It's super uncomfortable and weird and really high anxiety and stressful for me. The baker's hat with a little thing that attaches, a little strap that attaches from the hat to the shoulder. There's a green apron, which is super fucking weird. On all this white stuff, you're wearing a bright green apron. That's just the guys. The girls are wearing like this gown thing, I think, and a veil. They used to have to keep a veil over their face. Not no more.
During part of it, yeah, we'd have to put the veil. Now all the women in the room will veil their faces, and so put the veils over our faces. Which, by the way, it's hot and stuffy under all that polyester synthetic stuff. Like, there were a couple of times I was like, I hope this is over soon because I might pass out.
And it's super unflattering. Like,
it's creepy.
None of the men are handsome. None of the women are beautiful. We all look like a bunch of freaks. We all look like a bunch of freaks in the temple clothes. And this stuff should have been talked about in the temple prep class because it's weird. For me, it didn't traumatize me, didn't scare the hell out of me, but it does for a lot of people. It makes a lot of people never, ever want to do it ever again.
Right.
So this is stuff they need to start divulging in the temple prep classes.
I mean, I'm fine if they don't, because I'm fine if people go and have this traumatic experience and be like, I'm never going there again. And maybe this church isn't what I thought it was. Like,
Yeah,
I'm fine with that happening.
That's fine with me too. But I mean, as far as people that want to stay in the church,
Yeah.
so here's the thing: this is informed consent. If you have all the information on the table, all the information on the table, you can make a good informed decision. Informed consent, full informed consent. Well, they don't tell you about any of the weird ritualistic things that you do in there. That once you do those things, not everybody, but most people feel like, yeah, this is really weird. This is really cult-like. Am I really not in a cult? I don't know. I'm not sure. That's how a lot of people feel after doing it. None of that was mentioned in my temple prep classes. All I was told was, you're going to see a lot of things that are really mind-blowing. There's going to be a lot of symbolism. So it's going to be really strange and mind-blowing.
I mean, it was.
It was,
but not in the way you think it would be.
That was super, super, super understatement, way putting it lightly. That was no prep at all. And I was not told about any covenants I would be making. Lifelong committing covenants.
Right.
That are serious, like super serious and heavy. I talk about them lightly because I don't believe in it anymore. But for those that do believe, it's like a matter of life and death. Some of those covenants, and they affect your afterlife after you die. They affect eternity. Anyway, moving forward, we did go through with the endowments. We did our endowments the day before our actual wedding, our sealing. The endowment, I kind of talked briefly about this earlier. It was super weird. Men and women on separate sided rooms. You watch a movie about certain things, and you get threatened by Lucifer, Satan, the devil is in the movie, and he looks right at the camera. If you do not walk uprightly before these covenants, you will be in my power, or something like that.
Yeah. Basically
threatening you're going to be under his power if you don't uphold your covenants. So they're totally using fear-mongering tactics, manipulation, coercion.
I just want to add the language, the liturgy of the temple endowment ceremony has changed over the years. And so a lot of people might come here and say, I just went to the temple for the first time and it wasn't that bad, Well, there's a reason it's not quite so bad today as it used to be.
Yeah, and it has changed over the years. It's gotten more tolerable, but it's still pretty bad.
Yeah,
in my opinion. One brief thing, getting married in the temple, I kind of felt like it was my moment of redemption, redeeming myself for not having served a mission. Because I know everyone was disappointed in me and my family. Like they say, we love you no matter what, we'll support you no matter what, but
that's sweet.
They're just words. That's just lip service. I could feel the disappointment and the judgment for not going on mission. So by choosing to go through the temple, which I was only doing for Ava, I didn't want to. I didn't give a shit about going to the temple. Like I said, I just didn't want to go to hell. I didn't care about getting to heaven. I just didn't want to go to hell. But I was willing to get married in the temple because that's what Ava wanted. Just going through the motions, doing what was expected. Same recurring theme. I had carried the guilt and shame and embarrassment, dirty, used and abused feelings, all that from losing my virginity when I was 19. Carried that all the way up to the time when I got married. So I was like 21, I think. So at least a couple years, which doesn't sound that long, but for someone who has anxiety, depression, it's that much worse. In the temple, they do what's called an initiatory, and I think it's basically like a second baptism, more or less, because they rubbed some oil on my head, said, I pronounce you clean from the sins of this world or the sins of this generation, something along those lines. Right. Basically pronouncing me clean. At that very moment, I actually felt forgiven by God. I felt like I really was clean. So that was beautiful in that moment. I actually felt redemption for a moment. So that was nice. It was a little bit of a relief. Did our sealing the next day. The sealing is the wedding, but it's not anything like the kind of wedding that's in real life. There's no walking down the aisle. There's no saying vows to each other. There's nothing romantic at all. It's zero romance. I don't even remember hearing the word love at all. Maybe they said it, but I don't think they did. No. So I remember sitting there the day of our sealing, sitting there with her, and I just, like, I was anxious. It didn't feel really spiritual and special to me. Like, I was excited to finally get to marry her, but I did not feel spiritual at all. And I was wearing the weird Baker hat, and the robe and the green apron. So no tuxedo. I looked horribly frumpy. She was wearing her weird gown and veil, and we're sitting there. We go in, we do our thing. I don't even remember everything they said, so I don't even remember what I covenanted to. But I just said yes because I was going through the motions, and I just wanted to be with her. And I start bawling not because the spirit was not the spirit. Because I didn't feel anything spiritual. I literally didn't. I just felt super happy, super excited, and I'm an emotional guy. When I get really emotional or sensitive, I start bawling. And so I was sitting there bawling. Everyone in the room's looking at me thinking, oh man, he's really feeling the spirit. This is awesome. It's just elevated emotion. That's all it was.
Right.
I was just super happy to be there with this girl that I loved at the time. Before our kids were born, Ava and I, one thing that neither of us had checked off, because you know how in the church it's just a list of checkbox items. One thing neither of us ever checked off was getting our patriarchal blessings. So mine wasn't super important to me in a good way. I just remember certain things with it that are shelf items, so to say. It was either when we were engaged or shortly after getting married. It's probably while we were engaged, because I imagine they would have wanted us to get those before going to the temple. But
yeah.
In any case, it was before the kids were born, and we went together on the same day. For those that don't know what it is, it's pretty much like a fortune telling, to put it lightly. They tell you what to expect in the rest of life, who you're going to marry, a little bit about maybe whether or not having kids. It'll say what your lineage is. It tells you your strengths and what you need to improve on. Is that pretty much what it is?
Yeah, I mean, it'll tell you. So there are 12 tribes of Israel is what it is.
Yeah.
And so it'll tell you which tribe your lineage comes from, whether you are biologically from that lineage or maybe you have been adopted into that lineage, which, I mean, it really doesn't mean anything. I remember like spending so much time trying to understand, like, what does it mean that I'm from the tribe of Ephraim and not Manasseh or not another one? Like, it doesn't really mean anything. I think it means like you're going to be a missionary and do missionary work.
I didn't know the guy. He was some old guy. They always are. It's always like someone 70 or older.
Yeah, they're called the patriarch for your stake or your geographical area.
Is another, in my opinion, is another sexist thing. But
yeah,
the whole church, it's all about patriarchy and misogyny. It's a good old boys club is all it is.
Yes.
So anyway, it's this older guy who I didn't know him. He didn't know me. We're strangers. Somehow he could tell my future. And this actually showed, again, the lack of spirit of discernment or power of discernment, whatever you want to call it. Not knowing anything about me, if he really were in touch with God, he wouldn't have said what he said. He looks at me and he's like, I know your father would be so proud of you for doing this. That was a slap in the face because my dad had never once been proud of me for anything ever in my life. Not that I felt from him anyway. I never felt like he was ever proud of me for anything. So that was very triggering because not only was he never proud of me for anything, but he had been out of my life for more than almost 10 years at that time. More than 5 years at least. I didn't know anything about where he was. He didn't know anything about what was going on in my life. He wouldn't have been proud of me. He wouldn't have even cared. He probably would have thought it was stupid that I was doing that. So that was really hurtful that the patriarch said that. And if he really did have communication with God or any kind of spirit of discernment or power of discernment, whatever, he would have not said something like that. He wouldn't have said anything about my dad. My mom was there with me. Her parents were there with us. My mom chimed up. She came to my side and she was like, no, his dad's a bad person. He's just a horrible person. And we just ignored that. So that was weird. I definitely had to put that on the shelf. I didn't have time to think about it, but it was hurtful and insulting and really weird. Like I still don't know what to make of it. Like, why did he feel the need to say that? So then in my actual blessing, I don't remember what tribe they said I'm from. That doesn't matter. The things that stood out to me, there was really nothing positive at all about it, in my opinion. It didn't give me any inspiration anyway, and it definitely didn't feel spiritual. In fact, it added on to my feelings of not feeling good enough and having so much expected of me and not living up to people's expectations, because it said that I will be a leader in Zion. And it's like, for one thing, how am I going to be a leader when I have anxiety so bad? But it specifically said, it said one of these two phrases. I don't remember exactly which phrase. It either said, people will come to depend on you, do not let them down. Or it said, people will come to depend on you, don't disappoint them. It either said, don't disappoint them or don't let them down. One of those two things.
Yikes.
And so it's like, oh, great. There's more expectations put on me. I already feel like I'm not good enough. Like, even though I got married in the temple and kind of felt redemption for a minute, that feeling quickly went away. Within the first few months, I felt like I was never good enough for her or for her dad, especially. Like, I felt like I wasn't meeting his expectations and standards for his daughter. Being around other men in the ward, I felt like they were these spiritual giants. I've always felt so inferior and just out of place, not good enough. And then this spiritual thing that's supposed to be amazing and inspiring and in most cases brings peace to people, it just gave me more anxiety, and it exacerbated my depression because I knew I wasn't going to be able to meet the expectations stated in that. And it made me feel like I'm really not doing good enough at this point in my life. So I got married in the temple. I still was on that perpetual hamster wheel of unworthiness. And honestly, like, I wasn't really doing anything bad at that point in my life. I just probably wasn't doing good enough because I didn't have some high calling in the church. I wasn't actively engaged in my callings. I hadn't served a mission, and this was coming back to bite me in the ass, actually. Like, even though I got married in the temple, people would always ask, hey, so where'd you serve a mission? Oh, I didn't go on one. And so there's the instant guilt and shame and judgment with that. So that was the patriarchal blessing experience. Not inspirational, no peace given to me at all, just more shame, more guilt, more anxiety, more depressed feelings, feeling like I'm unworthy and not good enough.
But you'd think that if this blessing was really coming from God, then God would know what you needed to hear, right? And what would have been helpful to you, what would have helped ease your anxiety and boost your self-confidence and your feeling of competency.
Our first year of marriage, before we had kids, we were given the calling of nursery leaders, which I actually enjoyed it. I did, because it was cool being around all the kids, seeing them play, and they're innocent, naive. They get to be themselves because they don't have the pressure and guilt and everything put on them that we get as we grow up in the church. So it was just fun and sweet seeing these sweet little kids play. I loved it. Also, I loved it because I didn't have to go listen to boring lessons in Sunday school. Like in the church, the men are taught that they're supposed to be the providers for the family. I mean, society teaches that, but especially in the church, because in the church, the women are told they are really supposed to stay home and be mothers, take care of kids, be homemakers. So I felt super extra stress and expectation trying to be a provider for Ava and I and our future family. And I wasn't making a lot of money at the time because not going to college. And so I didn't have a really high income career. She basically went from riches to rags with marrying me because her family was well to do. And I was just like, I still am blue collar and didn't make a lot of money. And so she was the baby of her family where she was handed everything, had all the expectations and everything. Then marrying me, I couldn't provide all that to her. So there started to be some resentment. She had to work for a while before we had our first daughter because I just wasn't making enough money. Like, I was working full time and even some overtime, but I just wasn't making enough money. And so she had to work a little bit, and she was resenting me for that. She started becoming hateful and abusive. And our first daughter was born in 2007. Our second daughter was born in 2009. I'm just going to kind of gloss over the details here because I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. But she was not only verbally and psychologically abusive, but also physically. She would hit me, throw things at me, just like my dad. It was like childhood all over again.
Wow.
With the person that I thought that loved me and cared about me. And she was super abusive, like almost as bad as my dad was. And I couldn't fight back. I mean, I could have, but I was always taught never, ever to be violent or physical with girls ever, unless life depends on it. So I never did fight back. I just took it. After my second daughter was born, my second daughter was born in 2009. It was either late 2009 or 2010. There was one night where I was just so tired of the abuse, the physical abuse, the verbal and emotional too, but even the physical, like it hurt physically, but also made me feel super emasculated. Her family, I don't think they knew the extent of how abusive she was, but they knew a little bit, but they thought it was no big deal. And they would even kind of make fun of me for it, like not directly, but one of her brother-in-laws said, well, if my wife smacks me on the butt and I love it, it's fun. And I'm like, that hurts, because it was not a sexual thing with me. It was anger, frustration, physical violence. It was not sexual or playful by any means. She was super abusive. That's all there is to it. Anyway, 2009 or 10, I don't remember for sure which year, but one of those years in December, we had an argument that started over money. I spent some money to buy a present for somebody at work because we were doing Secret Santa, and she got mad at me thinking I spent too much money. It got heated. She started calling me names, started being physically violent, hitting me, threw some stuff at me. And I had just had enough at this point because I had been dealing with this for about 4 or 5 years at this point of her being super angry and abusive. And so I was like, maybe the cops can teach her, maybe they can scare something into her. So I called the cops. They came over. They came over after all this had happened. I told them what happened. She confirmed it all. She didn't deny any of it. She's like, yeah, I did all that stuff. And they told me one of us has to leave. So I opted to leave because she was good with the kids. She was never abusive with the kids, luckily. They were young at this point, and this was before my son was born. So I was like, she should probably stay home with the kids, take care of them. They need her. So I went and stayed at my mom's house for a week. And I thought they were just going to talk to her, scare her, teach her a lesson by scaring her. But they gave me the option to press charges, and they were kind of giving me the idea that I really should, otherwise it might just get worse. So I did. I opted to press charges. She got charged with domestic violence because it was in front of the kids. All this stuff that happened was in front of the kids. So she got charged with domestic violence, and she had to take an anger management course and pay a fine of like $500 or $600, which bit me in the ass because I was the sole income provider, so I paid for it. Things got better for like just a few months after I came back. And by the way, her dad knew about all this when it happened. Like he knew the night that the cops came over and all this stuff going on, and he still thinks his daughter's fine and doesn't have a problem and thinks that I'm overreacting.
Wow. So
much that he's concerned about money and had her take all of our money and move it into his account for protection. So I had no support from her family. My family was super supportive. I went and stayed at my mom's house for a week. She and I communicated over email. We finally got to a point where I believed she was going to be better. So I went back home after about a week. Things were better for a few months, but then they just swing back to her old ways. And I just, from that point on, I never thought about calling the cops again because I didn't think she was going to change, and it would have just made things worse. She would have gotten in more legal trouble, which would have been a problem for me since she didn't have a job to pay the fines I had to pay them. So it was pointless to call the cops. Wow. So I just had to deal with it. It got worse. It made it hard to go to church because we had to put on this front of being a happily married couple.
Of course.
And also seeing all the other couples in sacrament meeting, their arms around each other, holding hands, smiling, some even hugging, little kisses in the hallway and stuff. I wanted that.
Going somewhere like that and then having all of that put in your face can be even more painful than what's happening at home. For anyone who's out there who's wondering, like, why don't people just go to church? Like, that's the best place for people to be. That's the best place for healing and understanding and growth. And you got to understand, sometimes being at church is more painful than whatever else you're going through in your life. And actually the opposite of being helpful.
I wanted our marriage to last. I wanted a stable family life for our kids. I wanted a more peaceful home life. So I knew that maybe the only way we could get better is to seek out therapy or counseling or something. And so I did go to the bishop once. One good thing he did do is when I told him how severe the problems were, and I told him about me being a victim of not only emotional and psychological abuse, but especially physical abuse. When I had told him about the physical abuse too, he did offer to get the police involved. So that was really cool. Like bishops usually don't do that stuff. They usually try to keep it under wraps, and they avoid at all costs getting law enforcement involved because that could bring a bad name to the church if it makes news.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But he offered, and I declined though because I knew it would result in me paying her legal fees, and it would probably result in her wanting to divorce me. And the thing is, like, I guess I had Stockholm syndrome to some degree, because even though she treated me so horrible, treated me like shit, told me she hated me, I still cared about her and loved her at that point. I didn't want our marriage to end. And so I opted to not get the police involved because I knew she would probably divorce me if I did. But then she had mood swings. Like once in a while, it seemed like things were okay. It seemed like she loved me. It seemed like she did want to stay together. And I knew she wanted to at least stay together for the kids. I just kept hoping things would get better. And I just kept hoping and hoping and hoping and hoping and hoping and hoping and hoping. And they didn't. When I was talking to the bishop, he offered marriage counseling. But of course, he referred us to LDS Family Services. They were going to pay for it because money was tight. But so that was cool that he offered to pay for the counseling, the therapy. And it's helpful for some. It is helpful for some people, but not for many. Because the ultimate goal of the therapists and counselors is stay in the church, keep believing in God. And we went to like at least 4 or 5 different counselors, not back to back, but like we would spend a few weeks, several sessions with one. Wasn't working out, we would try several sessions with another one, and nothing got better. They just kept telling us, pray together, read the scriptures together. One of them did this stupid thing about there's a triangle of husband, wife, God at the top. And the more you both work toward God, you'll come back together. That's bullshit. Like I said, the counselors, their goal is to bring you to God. And so they're under the mindset that any 2 people can stay together as long as they're both working to God. Like no matter what the incompatibility sexually, romantically, emotionally, whatever, it doesn't matter as long as they're both coming to God. That's not how it works. But that's what's in their mind. And one of our counselors was just rehashing that all the time and even quoting scriptures. And the questionnaire they gave us at the beginning of each session, we would mark, like it would ask about how things went during the week and how you feel about things. If you had any fights, arguments during the week, stuff like that. We filled it out every time, but like he never looked at it because he never went over anything on that questionnaire. So it wasn't getting better, but I kept holding on to hope. I was praying sometimes that our relationship would get better, but it only got worse. And it had gotten so bad that I had thought about suicide, and I even attempted it a few times. And I know it sounds horrible because I have kids that love me and depend on me, but when the person who's supposed to love you the most makes you feel so hated and takes you for granted and treats you like the scum of the earth, it's hard to want to live. And I had severe mental health problems that I still have. I'm on meds for them, better meds for them now, but with the depression and the anxiety and the way she was treating me every day, insulting me and criticizing me every single day, never making me feel loved, I felt like I had no place in this world and I just didn't want to live anymore. And it was to a point where even though I know I have kids that I need to take care of, I just was so damn miserable. So miserable. I felt like I couldn't go on. And the kids, I felt like the kids were going to turn against me eventually because she would call me names and insult me in front of them. I love my kids so much and I loved them back then and I still do and I always will, but I was just so miserable. Like I felt like I didn't belong anymore. I felt like I was worthless. Nobody would miss me. I felt like the kids are resilient enough that they could recover and move on, and that Ava could marry someone who could get them a bigger house, a nice car, all the things they ever wanted, and be the husband that I never was. So I came really close within minutes at the end of my life. The thing that got me to change my mind, though, was thinking about my kids and how traumatizing it would be and all the stuff I'd miss out on if I had gone through with it. So it changed my mind last minute each time.
I'm glad you're able to have a little bit of clarity to be able to think about them. Because I know that's not always possible when you're that far down at the end of your rope and really just like rock bottom. Your brain cannot think clearly and your judgment making skills are so impaired. It's truly amazing that you were able to think yourself out of that, and definitely no shame or judgment on anybody who was not able to do that, for sure.
Right. I've got nothing but empathy for people that are going through that and people that do go through it and die by suicide. I've got no disrespect, no negative feelings, no judgment. Just my heart breaks for them, goes out to them because I've been there.
Right.
It was within minutes of the end of my life. I know what it's like. But I guess this would be a good time I want to show these tattoos real quick. These really helped me get through with my mental health. So I got this, the semicolon.
Tell our audience what this semicolon represents.
So the semicolon, evidently it can mean different things to different people, but to me and a lot of people, it represents suicide awareness, being a suicide survivor, or being supportive of people who are suicidal. I have it for my personal struggle with suicide, and to let people know I'm a safe person to talk to. So it's a semicolon, and it looks backward, but it says, my journey continues. And that reminds me, I've got so much to keep living for, so much to keep living for. And then I have my kids' names, or their initials anyway, for my 3 older kids right there, and my love of music also. But having my kids' initials right there, I can look at that and think of them, not just because they look cool. Like I didn't even think about trying to look cool. I got them because they have personal meaning to me. Like they'll remind me I always have something to live for. At this point, I was mostly inactive at church. Like I was hardly ever going. When I did go, I was mostly just going to sacrament meeting and then going home afterwards. There were even times where when we had moved into Ava's sister's basement, they lived just right across the street from the church. So I would sneak out after sacrament meeting, walk home, hang out at home, and then go back right before the end of church. So I know it sounds horrible that I was sneaking around like that. I never snuck around with other women, or never even snuck around to hang out with friends. I was every time I snuck around, it was by myself. It was because she was so controlling. I couldn't even tell her what I was doing because she would always find something to get mad at me for. It was so intense that we had a shared bank account. Anytime I would spend just a couple bucks on soda or whatever, she would question, what were you spending money on? Why'd you spend this much? And she would lose her shit on me, even though I was the one bringing in the money. And it got so bad that just to avoid fighting with her, the money I was setting aside for tithing, I would tell her I was setting aside, I'd pay it at the end of the month. I kept it for personal spending money so that she wouldn't question what I'm spending money on, where I'm spending money. But I was never buying anything bad. It was just little things like soda or a snack or, nothing harmful. And it was never huge amounts of money, just a couple bucks here and there. Mm-hmm. But because of how controlling she was, I had to hide it from her and use my tithing money. Instead of actually paying the tithing that I set aside, I used it for personal spending money just to avoid fighting with her. That's how bad things were.
And for anybody who hears this and thinks like, what a trivial, petty thing to do, I think it's important to understand the depth of the human need for self-autonomy.
Yeah.
That the old quote, give me liberty or give me death. It's not entirely hyperbole. We as humans, like it's an actual need. In order to be thriving mentally, to have good mental health, we have to have self-autonomy. We have to have a degree of self-autonomy, or at least even if it's just a perceived degree, like it has to be there. And this is a good lesson that we can remember for our kids too, that it's easy to get caught up in like, I'm the parent, you're the kid, you have to do what I say all day long. To remember how important it is for their mental health as well, to have some self-autonomy, to be able to have a little bit of spending cash, if that's one way, or a little bit of time where they get unstructured play or unstructured time, they get to do whatever they want with, or, however you can fit that into your life, giving your kids as much autonomy as you reasonably can, will do wonders for their mental health. And so as Josh, as you're talking about just having some cash to do something with, it's not about the soda. It's not about the snacks. It comes down to that self-autonomy too. And then skipping out on church also, like you finally get to go and like walk around somewhere, wherever. And it's all self-directed. And it's so huge. And that probably helps your mental health a lot. Just doing those very little things.
Yep.
So very, very understandable.
Yeah. So anyway, we moved into this last apartment. Things were still horrible between us, still fighting a lot. The thing that finally got me to wake up and realize that things are never going to change or get better for us, that there's no hope to hold on to anymore. She cheated on me.
Oh, yeah.
This was in September 2014. At that point, that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I finally agreed to divorce. She had mentioned it before, but I just kept hoping things would get better until this showed me it was never going to change. Also, the church really is hard on people to get divorced. They say they'll say they love and accept and welcome everybody, but the church is a horrible place for divorced people.
Especially when you believe that any righteous man and righteous woman can have a good marriage and work it out,
Right.
Especially when you believe that, because again, that's what President Kimball taught. Then it's easy to say they got divorced, so clearly they weren't being righteous enough. They weren't being dedicated enough. Like something's wrong with them. And maybe that's not the kind of person I want to associate with. So I hear what you're saying. It really is not a very welcoming place for people who have been divorced.
So my oldest daughter, she had turned 8 in 2015, and I wanted to baptize her because that was one of the things I still believed in. So I went and talked to the bishop at the ward I was living in. And I didn't know anything about him. He didn't know anything about me, so I had to tell him I was divorced, and I didn't even get a chance to really tell him much about my background. So he still didn't know much about me, but he told me I need to start going back to church, pay tithing. That's the thing. You always got to pay tithing to do anything.
Yeah.
Keep paying tithing. Had to read the scriptures more, go to church more. And I was okay to baptize her. But for some reason, even though I was an elder, even though I had been ordained an elder, I had the Melchizedek priesthood, I had been through the temple, I had never done any serious sin, still keeping the word of wisdom. I was doing the best I could. I just wasn't going to church very much, and I wasn't paying tithing. He told me that he didn't feel right allowing me to do the confirmation of the Holy Ghost for my own daughter. The laying on of hands after baptism, laying on of hands to confirm the Holy Ghost.
So you could baptize her, but not confirm her right afterward?
Yeah, so I was...
That's so weird. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I was unworthy to do the confirmation. And the confirmation is the more special part, because the baptism, you just recite a prayer, and it's the same prayer no matter who's being baptized. And a 16-year-old can do it because a priest can do it. The confirmation is the special part, because usually it's a father doing some amazing thing for their kid, and they get to make it personal and their own special touches to it. And it's a really good bonding in it, and it would have been for me. The bishop took that away from me because he felt, for whatever reason, he felt I wasn't worthy because I wasn't paying tithing and going to church. Maybe, I don't know. Those were the only things I could think of. But he decided, because he's a judge in Israel, he decided to take that away from me. Super insulting, because the way the church works, the way the membership is, the way wards are, it's milieu control. When you're not doing something major that you should be doing, like taking sacrament but not taking sacrament, or not getting married in the temple and just getting married civilly, or not confirming your own child when you have the Melchizedek priesthood, people assume that you're a sinner. They assume you did something horrible. So I'm left all these assumptions flying around about me. Who knows what people were thinking? I had to tell them the bishop didn't feel right letting me confirm her. And that was a slap in the face. Who the hell is he to decide to take away something special from me with my own daughter, not knowing a damn thing about me, other than I'm not going to church very often or paying tithing very often. So even though the brother-in-law that we had lived with, even though he had been less than Christ-like with me on several occasions, I still felt like he was a good man spiritually. I felt like he was a good priesthood holder. So my ex-wife, she was the ex-wife at this time, Ava, she suggested that her brother-in-law, the one we lived with, be the one to do the confirmation.
Mhm.
And that was a slap in the face too, because he's now my ex-brother-in-law. I know how her family truly feels about me.
Mm.
And he's confirming my daughter because I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for whatever reason this stupid bishop decided. So I have my ex-brother-in-law confirm my own daughter right there. And I couldn't even be in the circle. I had to watch my own daughter have the special thing be done because the bishop decided I wasn't good enough.
Like for some of our audience who have not grown up in the church, you can kind of compare it to like walking your daughter down the aisle on her wedding day.
Yes.
And having to get permission from someone else, from a stranger, to do that. And then him saying no. Like, you can help her get ready, you can be there with her, but once it's time to walk her down the aisle, you don't have my permission to do that. You can't do that. I won't let you. What an abuse of power.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
For sure. Now, I'm not blaming. I mean, he did this, and it sucks. It's not totally completely his fault. He's a victim of the system. He's doing the best he can. He's doing what he believes is right.
Mm-hmm.
He's doing what the church teaches him is right. The church is imperfect. The people are doing the best they can to try to be perfect. The church is so horribly flawed and imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just doing what he believed was right. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He didn't realize how he hurt me. But it's not his fault. He's a victim too. I was a victim, but so is he. He's a victim of a fucked up system.
Definitely. Yeah, well said.
The church had not been a good place for me at any point in my life, ever.
Mm-hmm.
The honesty I learned, the compassion, the service, the kindness, all the good things I learned those while I was in the church, but you can learn those things outside the church. You can learn them without any religion at all. Those can be learned anywhere. The church does not own those things. All the good things the church does are not unique to the church, but most of the bad things the church does, like bishops' interviews with kids, most of the bad things in the church are unique to the church.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate.
So I just am realizing more and more that I'm to a point where the church is really not doing anything good in my life, that all it's doing is causing me to have continued stress and anxiety. I just, throughout my whole life, went through the motions, did what was expected of me. I was a lazy learner. That's what had kept me in it so long.
I like your shirt.
Thank you. I never questioned anything that I was taught. I just believed it all. I never did my own research. I never studied outside of seminary or Sunday school or anything. So I really was a lazy learner. And that's what kept me in the church so long. Because if I had have questioned, oh boy, if I had have questioned the stuff I did find out later on by questioning, I would have left a long time ago. I still was keeping the word of wisdom at this point, but I did finally stop wearing the garments, and it was so liberating to not have to wear the garments anymore because they're super unflattering. Like
they're terrible
for women especially, but even for men, like especially with me with my body issues, like I never felt comfortable going outside without a shirt on. Like what's a lot of guys do that, and there's nothing wrong with that, like outside without a shirt on, but I couldn't even do that because of my body issues. But then to have to wear these hideous, ugly, uncomfortable garments on top of me, make me feel like my body is dirty when I already felt that way.
Yeah.
Just
your body is so shameful, you have to cover it up.
Yeah, just perpetuated my body image issues that I already had. I didn't actively date around a whole lot. I kind of got on some of the dating apps because they used to be better back then in 2015. They're trash now. They're really, really trashy now. They were decent in 2015. And I had met a girl on there. I'm just going to call her Claire. I met her on there. We get to chatting, talking, hanging out. We start hanging out. Things just naturally progress. But one day when we were at her house, just sitting there on the front porch, some missionaries came by and they're like, "Hey, can we talk to you for a minute?" And she just goes, "Joseph Smith was a fraud." And in my mind, I was like, "What?"
Those poor boys.
Yeah, I didn't react, because I didn't want to be weird to her. But in my mind, I was thinking, how is he a fraud? Like, does that mean he wasn't a real person? Did he not exist? I didn't know what she meant by that. Because at that point, I only knew the correlated stories of Joseph Smith.
Right.
He had one single first vision where he saw three visitors, and he was married to one woman, and he found the Book of Mormon gold plates and translated the Book of Mormon. You know, the correlated story.
Yeah. He was nothing but a hero.
Yeah.
Always.
He was this amazing dude that was persecuted for his beliefs. He died a martyr. He never deserved to die. He was so perfect and amazing. So that blew my mind that she said that. It was some cognitive dissonance for sure. Because at that point it was, because I didn't know the real Joseph Smith. I knew the church's version of Joseph Smith. So I just kind of pushed that to the back of my mind. And I'm like, that's weird that she said that, but okay, whatever. So we continued dating. We eventually moved in together. Still never got married because she has a heart defect and mental health issues and other things that make it really hard for her to have any kind of job. So she was living on disability and Medicare or Medicaid, whichever one of those it is for younger people. And if we had gotten married, she would have lost those benefits, and it would have been too expensive for me to take care of her without her income and have her on my insurance because of her health problems. She had to go to the hospital so much, even the ER a lot. She had several surgeries. Just been way too expensive to have her on my insurance. And so we just continued living in sin. We were living together and learning things about each other. Eventually, she met my older 3 kids. She became like a stepmom to them. They thought she was really strict and really harsh and cruel at first, and she kind of was. She really kind of was. She eventually softened up and became nicer to them, and they really developed a good relationship. We decided to. I was okay with just having the kids I already had, but she talked me into having another child with her because she wanted to have a baby together that we could raise from infancy instead of just her having these 3 stepkids, so to say. So I eventually came around. I was resisting it for a while because I knew it would be a financial strain. But I finally came around, and I was okay with the idea of having one more baby with her because I thought we were going to be together forever. That was the plan. Like even though we weren't going to do temple marriage, obviously, I planned on staying with her the rest of my life. I loved her. I thought she loved me. It felt like she did, but in hindsight, I see that she used me just to become a mother figure for my older 3 kids and to try to become a mom with the new baby.
She had her heart defects.
Yeah,
right.
So she was born with a heart defect, so she couldn't have a child of her own.
Yeah.
So it was like we would either have to adopt or something, but we couldn't afford adoption. So one of our mutual friends offered one day, just out of the blue, offered to be a surrogate for us. So that was super cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
what a big offer.
Yeah. And like,
what a huge offer.
And she just offered to do it for free too. She didn't want compensation, nothing.
And for anyone who doesn't know, the church really strongly discourages surrogacy. There's this whole idea that goes along with families can be together forever if and only if they're sealed to their parent. And that's done in one of 2 ways. Either they go through the ritual ceremony at the temple to be sealed to their families, or number 2, children are born in the covenant. So they're born to parents who are already sealed together. Having a surrogate mom, that like really complicates the process.
Yeah.
And so I think the church just wants to be like, we're not going to touch that. Just don't do it.
On Halloween 2017, she gives us a call. We go over there and find out that she's pregnant, and so we're super excited. So my daughter was born on May 11th next year. She's, for those that have heard the bitter fruit, Todd Christofferson, he's a general authority or an apostle or something. He gave this horrible talk about children born outside of wedlock or to unwed mothers or anything like that. So my daughter was born out of wedlock because I was never married to Claire. I wasn't married to anybody. So she's a bitter fruit for that, and also because she's born through surrogacy. They frown on. So she's like super bitter. She's amazing. She is so amazing.
It's like a cute little lemon now, huh?
How could anyone call that bitter fruit?
Oh, she's so cute. I love that picture too. So you've been playing guitar all these years, basically, right?
Yeah.
How long do you say? Like 20 years?
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Music has often been one of the things that gets me through the hardest times. Like even even when I was gone from Ava at that time when she got the domestic assault charge. Music really helped me, especially during that time. Helped me to feel a little bit of peace. So my daughter was born in 2018, and we had some Claire and I had some fights, and I was seeing a pattern that I again was a victim of abuse. It wasn't physical abuse this time, but it was severe, super severe psychological abuse, to the point where she was even gaslighting me. Like, I was starting to wonder, what the hell is wrong with me? Am I going insane? And so when my daughter was 11 months old, youngest one, the one that was the bitter fruit one, when she was 11 months old, Claire and I had a big fight. It started from her insulting my older three kids, showing that she really doesn't care about them much. I thought she did, but she didn't. And it just escalated. She decided she wanted to take a break. She went to her mom's house in Idaho. She took my daughter with her, but she was able to, because I forgot to mention we had granted legal guardianship for Claire. Since we weren't married, she couldn't be like the stepmom or anything. She could just get legal guardianship.
Gotcha.
So she had legal guardianship, and
so the surrogate mom had to sign away her parental rights. Is that right?
Yeah.
So then you would have been the sole parent for the baby. So you were the sole parent, and you're not married to Claire, so there's no way that she could have any kind of parental rights. So legal guardianship would be the only way that she could even like pick her up from school or pick her up from the doctor's or take her to doctor's appointment, like stuff like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot the legal details there. So yeah, I had been granted sole custody of my daughter when the surrogate mom signed away her rights.
Okay.
And we had to do a court hearing for Claire to get the guardianship. And this fight that we had when my daughter was 11 months old, it was just like literally the Saturday before Monday when we had the court. We had this court thing on Monday to grant the legal guardianship. The big fight we had was on Saturday, just that weekend right before. And because of how bad we were fighting, and knowing that we needed to go counseling, her threatening to break up with me and other things, I was like, well, maybe we ought to really push back this guardianship hearing to a later date so we can have time to go counseling and fix things.
Right.
Because I wanted a stable life for our daughter. I didn't want us to break up and have to have her go back and forth. And when I said that, she got scared, and she's like, if you take her away from me, I'll kill myself. So she threatened suicide, and I took her seriously because she was a self-harmer. She had cut herself while she was with me. She had been admitted to behavioral health centers before I met her. So I took her serious, and that was the only reason I decided to go through with the hearing on Monday. And I lied to the judge. He's asking me if I think she would be a good mother figure. And I'm like, yeah, I'm confident she would be great. And I had a fake smile. I was lying to the judge because I was manipulated by Claire. She made me think she was going to kill herself if I did anything to affect her guardianship. So I had no choice. I really had no choice. I had to just allow her to get that, even though we were about to break up.
Nice. So right after she's got the legal guardianship in hand, then she takes the baby and
she took her,
escapes up to Idaho.
Yep. She went up to Idaho. She just a small town in Idaho, somewhere where everybody knows everybody, and her mom is good friend. Her mom and her whole family that lives up there, they all live close together. They're all good friends with everybody that works in the sheriff's department in that county, because her mom had been a dispatcher for like 10 years for that sheriff's department. So as soon as Claire got up to Idaho, she went and told the sheriff's department something. She told them a bunch of lies. They had her file a protective order against me, a restraining order.
Oh no.
Which terminated contact between me and Claire. But since my daughter was there with her, my daughter was on it too, so I had no contact with Claire or my daughter. Because I was
How scary.
Yeah, it was terrifying. I was doing video chats with my daughter for a little bit while she was up there, because I missed her. I wanted to make sure she wouldn't forget me. She was just 11 months old.
Yeah.
And at the end of April, they did come home for Easter weekend, so I did see her for like 2 or 3 days. But overall, she was up there in Idaho for more than 3 weeks. And near the end of that 3 weeks, near the end of April, I got served with this restraining order. And so I wasn't allowed to even do video calls with my daughter anymore. Wow. So I was heartbroken, because she was abandoning me. Claire was abandoning me and my older 3 children, showing that she didn't love any of us because she wanted to stay up there in Idaho. She was making threats, saying that she's gonna keep my youngest daughter up there, and that I'll have to go up there every other weekend if I want to see her. So then my heartbreak from her abandoning us, my heartbreak turned to fear. I got scared, wondering if, when, or even if I would get to see my daughter. And so I was trying to figure out what to do, especially with this protective order against me. So I talked to one of my friends who had been through a divorce before, and she told me I could actually remove the guardianship. I didn't even realize that was an option. They might have told me about it before, but I didn't think about it because all the stuff going on. She was, without saying all the details of what she was doing, when I told my lawyer about everything that was going on, I went back to the same lawyer that granted the guardianship, by the way. So he already kind of knew what she was like. And I later found out they purposely took, as long as they didn't give her guardianship right away, right after my daughter was born. They purposely took several months to even try for it because they wanted to make sure she would be a good enough person for that. And I'm glad they did that. I'm glad they took as long as they did because it gave them time to really see what she's like. And they told me they kind of figured something might happen. And so they definitely had some insight, and they didn't have the spirit of the Holy Ghost.
You mean, I was going to say, like, you mean they had the spirit of a discernment this whole time?
Yeah, they had the spirit.
Should have been going to them.
Yeah. So this same lawyer that granted the guardianship, he investigated all the stuff. I showed him, this wasn't just hearsay. I showed him screenshots of text messages between us and some emails and stuff, and showed him all the crazy shit that she was threatening and saying. And he not only felt that she way overstepped the boundaries of legal guardianship, but he was scared. He was legit worried for the safety of my daughter.
How validating must that have been then to like be able to, someone believes you and hears your story and is even more afraid than you are. Like they're taking it even more seriously than you are. That must have been like just such a relief, finally after all that time to like have somebody on your side that validates and believes you and has power to do something about it.
Yeah, definitely. Because like before she left, I legit was thinking maybe I am getting worse. Maybe my mental health is slipping away really bad because she was gaslighting me. She was telling me she was telling me that I have all these problems, and all along it was not me with the problem. So I told my lawyer about all this stuff, and he built a case against her. The official charge against her was that Claire had caused and would continue to cause irreparable harm by having my daughter in it.
Wow.
So beginning of May, we had a court hearing. I had papers served to her. She was ordered to return to Utah, bring my daughter back to me, and a restraining order was put in place against her to protect my daughter. And then we had the hearing. It was a couple 3 hours or so. The lawyer and the judge were both very clear that she had overstepped boundaries, and they kind of chastised her a little bit. And her guardianship was revoked, and so I finally had my daughter back. I could finally breathe. So I ended up with sole custody of my daughter again. She turned. So I've been raising her on my own since May 2019. So 2 years now, a little over 2 years now.
Wow. And how is she doing now?
She's doing great. She's thriving. She's super happy. She's really smart. She's having a lot of fun. She's so adorable and so amazing. And I love her so much. And I would never go back to, I love all my kids. I would never go back to being just a single dude, never having kids. Kids are amazing. I love them so much. I joined the ex-Mormon group on Facebook just because I was curious if there's anyone else around me that is leaving the church, and I wanted to make new friends that were not members of the church. And by doing that, I found out a lot more about the racism, the sexism, the homophobia, the bigotry, all the harm the church has done and continues to do, all the suicides it's responsible for. Some of this stuff I had known a little bit about, and it's not that I didn't care, it's just I wasn't fully aware of it. But just learning all that stuff by doing my own research, it was so disgusting to me. Like just the sexism and the homophobia alone are so disgusting. I absolutely cannot be a member of any group or organization that is against gay marriage or is as patriarchal as the church is. And even though the racist stuff was in the past, it was there for more than 130 years. And their scriptures that they still use, the Book of Mormon that they still use, still contains racist teachings about turning skin from dark to white, white into light some.
Mm-hmm.
Way too much
Exactly.
racism. And there's just, I could not be associated with such a disgusting, hateful, sexist, patriarchal, misogynistic, bigoted group. And so I resigned my membership in 2019.
There is an intense suffering, like all the extra shame and all the extra guilt that you had and that so many of us have gone through. And it takes such a toll on you and makes it so hard to enjoy life, to be present in life.
Yeah.
And to enjoy your moments and enjoy the short time that we do have to be like, to really be here and be alive. It's hard when you are living in fear of hell or living with all this guilt and shame that's just so unnecessary. So yeah, absolutely agree. There's so much harm that is done by the church and by the church teachings.
Yeah. I mean, like with the body image issues, like myself, I've finally been able to let that go. Finally.
Yay.
Thank you. Now the church still teaches today that women and girls are responsible for boys having clean thoughts, and if they dress a certain way, it's gonna make boys have dirty thoughts. That's fucking wrong. That's disgusting and horrible. That teaching needs to be done away with.
Mm-hmm.
One of my family members, one of my cousins, I think, one of my cousins, his son had been around my daughter one day when my daughter was wearing a tank top and shorts. And anyway, he told me, you need to have a talk with your daughter because the way she dresses makes my son feel uncomfortable. And I was like, okay. And so I did. I had to talk to my daughter. And I said, hey, the way you dress, there's nothing wrong with it. Keep dressing how you dress. If you feel comfortable and confident the way you dress, keep doing it. Don't worry what anybody thinks. You're not responsible for anybody's thoughts or reactions. You shouldn't even worry about what other people think. Just as long as you feel comfortable and confident, dress how you want to. It's your body, your decision. You're absolutely not ever responsible for anybody's thoughts, no matter what.
That is such good advice. We should put that on a bookmark and like send it out to all the post-Mormon parents. Like when you're talking to your kids about modesty and dress, especially your girls, here's some good ideas of what to say.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good segue into talking about things like modesty. So like how has your parenting changed in talking about like modesty and maybe chastity and like purity culture type stuff with your kids?
She talks to them about masturbation, and she teaches them it's normal, it's healthy, just be private about it. And I it's a little uncomfortable for me to talk to my girls about it. Mm-hmm. And it's probably uncomfortable for them, but mm-hmm. I still tell them anyway, it's fine if you do that. It's not dirty. It's not gross. Don't be embarrassed. It's normal. Everybody does it. Mm-hmm. Everybody does it at some point or other. Just be private about it. That's all that matters, is be private about it, but never be ashamed. Never feel bad for it. And in fact, I was talking to my oldest daughter recently, and I was telling her that sometimes you got to do that when you have the feelings and desires to have sex, and it's not always a good idea to just have sex. Sometimes you do that instead, and it's a healthier option.
Definitely.
I talk to them about boundaries, self-respect. I tell them sex is not bad, that it's not a horrible thing. It's a good thing. It's part of life. I tell them to try to save it till they are with somebody who is supportive. I tell them they don't have to wait till marriage. That it's totally fine if they do before marriage, just to be responsible about it. Use birth control. Make sure to do everything you can to avoid STDs, STIs. But because they're still pretty young, they're only 14 and 12, I do tell them, please wait till you're older, but you don't have to wait till marriage. I tell them that. I'm not sure what Ava tells them as far as how old and all that, but I'm considering having them both get on birth control. I know that sounds horrible, having young girls get on birth control, but I figure it's better to have prevention in place so that if they do have sex, it's better to already have prevention in place. Mm-hmm. I'm open about it. I talk to them about it. Just romance and dating and things in general like that. I'm so far opposite of how my parents ever were. Even after my parents got divorced, I couldn't talk to my mom about any of that stuff. And just last week, my daughter broke up with her boyfriend, and I went and picked her up from work. I took her out for ice cream. We sat. We had a really good talk for like 3 hours. I just listened to her. I listened to her heartbreak. I listened to how she felt about it. I didn't judge her. I didn't chastise her. I didn't tell her how to do things differently. I gave her a little bit of advice when she was talking about how she could have done things differently. But the main thing is I just listened to her, and it was really a bonding moment for us. It was amazing.
That's so huge. I'm so glad for you. I'm so glad you guys had those 3 hours together.
Yeah, like I never had that for myself when I was a kid, and so I couldn't do that if I were a member of the church, because the church just teaches no, 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 no.
Right.
But I encourage them to pursue their feelings, just be responsible about it. I've even told them. So here's another thing that resulted from me leaving the church. There's so much sexism and patriarchy and misogyny. It's disgusting. It's super harmful. And the way they treat LGBTQ people, no matter what they say about being loving and accepting, that's just not true, because they still do not allow same gender couples to get married in the temple.
Mm-hmm.
As long as that policy is in place, they're not accepting of LGBTQ people.
They still punish people who get married to their same gender. And
people still get excommunicated for that. Like deep down inside, even when I was going to church, I've always had a soft spot in my heart for LGBTQ people. When I was with Claire, one of her friends is lesbian, and she and her wife both have kids from previous marriages. They wanted to have a baby together, and they were married, but they couldn't afford adoption. They couldn't even afford to go to a sperm bank for a donation, because a sample is more than $700. And that doesn't even guarantee if it works or not. You still have to pay.
But to do it over and over and over again till it takes.
Yeah. So I was like, well, hey,
you did it again, didn't you?
Well, yeah, I did.
That's really awesome.
Cisgender heterosexual couples are not the only people that deserve to have babies. Everybody deserves to have babies if they want babies.
Right.
And some of the best parents I've seen are homosexual couples. I don't see why people think that same-gender couples would not be good parents, and why it would be a bad environment to raise a kid in. I've seen so much love from those people.
Yeah. Because we're told they don't. We are told that kids can't thrive unless they have a mom and a dad. And we buy it. And we believe that. So, even though it has no basis in reality.
Everybody deserves love. Everybody. And for anyone to say, no, you can't have love, you need to be celibate, or you need to marry someone of the opposite gender just to get back to God, that's not a God I would be interested in worshiping or living with. I've even talked to my girls about, I told them, I don't say when you find a husband, when you find a boyfriend, I tell them when you find a partner. It comes down to human rights, human desires, human feelings. This is all normal, natural stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody should have the right to say, no, you can't do this. As long as people are consenting, legal age adults, I encourage them to go ahead and explore any feelings they have and really learn who they are. And if they end up being with a girl, that's totally fine. If they end up liking girls and guys, totally fine. It doesn't matter to me. As long as they're happy and authentic and with themselves, especially, and genuine, that's what matters. Like, as long as whoever they're with is consenting and they're both being authentic and genuine.
That's so huge. I think that it reminds me, going back to autonomy, right? Just having the kids know that they have your support in doing that helps them feel like they have greater self-autonomy. They have the ability to control the destiny of their life and their journey, and which paths they're going to go in and what things they're going to try. And that's so huge. And again, that's going to help their mental health be stronger. That's going to help them be able to, when we have really good mental health, we're able to think more clearly. We're able to have better judgment making skills. We're able to use our executive functioning so much better.
Last year, my second daughter was dating a trans boy. One of my older family members was like, well, isn't it weird that your daughter's dating this trans boy? And that was because of the church, because of what the church teaches. And my reaction to that, I just said, no, it's not weird at all. It doesn't, like, why is it even a thing? I advocate for my kids. I just want them to be happy. And there was just way too much oppression, too much marginalization, not enough voices standing up for these people. So I just want to be a safe place. Like, I'm not trying to be some kind of knight in shining armor or anything. I just want to be a safe person that these people come to when their own family, they can't talk to their own family, or they feel like they don't want to live.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to be there for them and let them know that they're loved, they're accepted, they matter. I will be anybody's family who is excluded by their family for being LGBTQ, because everyone deserves love. Everyone deserves love.
Absolutely. Same. And the nice thing too is your kids are going to be able to do that for other people also.
Yeah.
They're getting out of these cycles of homophobia and sexism and misogyny, and they're going to be able to be that safe person for other people that they come across as well. So by you leaving the church and being that post-Mormon pioneer,
yes,
you're helping your kids start this new path, pave the way for more and more people to join. Are there any ways that your life has improved since leaving the church?
It's mostly gotten a lot better since my life has gotten better since removing the church from my life. And I say it like that. I don't want to say I left the church, because I didn't just leave the church. I woke up to the issues it has. I found the truth. I did some super intense research over a matter of a couple years. I was not a lazy learner by any means after I stopped going to church. I did my own research, found out the truth, and realized I cannot be a part of that organization that is so misogynistic and patriarchal and racist and homophobic. That helped me really become more accepting, more open-minded, even more empathetic. I've always been pretty empathetic and compassionate, but I've become even more so. I've made some really good friends. I'm more genuine, more authentic. All the good stuff I do now, it's not to look good for anybody or any God, because I don't even believe in God anymore. It's not to try to earn points to get to heaven or any sort of paradise after I pass away, because I don't believe in that either. When I do good things, it's because I genuinely want to help people. I genuinely want to help them feel loved. I feel more empowered with my own sense of conscience. I've never liked the idea of the Holy Ghost. I feel like most humans are born good. We're all innately good. We have the desire to do good. We can do good on our own without someone telling us how to be good, and without any kind of spirit of Holy Ghost telling us what's wrong and what's right. There was a scripture that says something about trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not to thine own understanding. I hate that, because that basically says that I can't think for myself. I have no conscience. I do. It's
like the ultimate gaslighting scripture.
Yeah, totally.
You're not competent enough to think for yourself.
Yeah.
So just trust God, or these intermediaries who speak for God with all your whole heart and soul.
If I'm going to progress in life, if I'm really going to progress in life, I need to be a critical thinker. I need to think for myself. I need to research. I need to learn things. And I will always trust science and history and geography, always, because those are provable things.
What kind of resources have helped you out as you're transitioning, from being a Mormon parent to less of a Mormon parent to like maybe a post-Mormon parent now? What things are really helpful for you that you can maybe share with our audience?
So some of the resources for parenting, I do want to do a plug for another one of my friends, Gretchen Day. She lives here in Utah. She wrote some books about value-based parenting.
Yay, Gretchen.
Yeah, she's awesome.
She is so awesome. I interviewed her. I'll put a link to that too. I did an interview with her several months ago, and she's just great.
So she sells these books on Amazon, but she also has a website. It's probably gretchenday.com or something like that. You can find it. The one that I would recommend the most, there's 7 books in the series.
That's a great one. Yep. So protecting children from unethical persuasion.
Yeah.
That's a really good one.
Definitely recommend this one. If nothing else, at least that one. There's My Belief or Yours. That was for critical thinking. Being positive and present makes us safer. Teaches about mindfulness and being positive and present. I Have a Choice, meaning which teaches like critical thinking. And then there's one about value of hard work, and one about finance, 3 Little Pigs and finance. And then there's one fictional one, just a story about someone's faith journey. But the one I would recommend the most of those is the first one, protecting children from unethical persuasion.
Yes. And if anyone wants to see that and see like a preview of that book, I also did a YouTube video of me reading that book cover to cover. And so you can,
It's awesome.
I'll put that link down here too. So you can go see what it's like. And then, I highly recommend ordering your own copy and going through it with your kids.
They teach you value-based parenting. They're written to where you can read them as children's books, but like even your teenagers can read them. And even just the parents reading them themselves is beneficial. It teaches you. The first one, Protecting Children, has actually been used in several countries, more than just in America. She's had people in other countries coming to her asking about using them in some of their courses and stuff. And even some university people have asked about it. So it's legit. It's like,
that's so good.
Yeah. And as far as support, I have found some groups on Facebook. There's one that gets kind of raunchy and kind of dumpster fire.
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
You have to be thick-skinned to be in that one, but there's some really good ones too that are more calm, more peaceful. One of the most therapeutic things for me personally, besides me talking to other people about my experience, is hearing other people's experiences. So I would highly recommend the podcast Mormon Stories, and just anywhere where you can find people that are willing to talk about these things, because talking is what really helps. Like silence can be a killer. Yes. So it's nice to be able to talk about these things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Finding that community is so important and just cannot be overstated how important that is. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. But before we do you want to share any major takeaways from all of this?
Also, if you're ever feeling alone, isolated, depressed, anything like that, just find someone to reach out to and know that life is worth living, no matter how hard it seems. I've been there. I've been in the depths of despair, and I'm just glad I kept on going. For everybody, your kids, but especially yourselves, all of us, we all need to pay more attention to mental health. We can't really pray away depression and anxiety. Reading scriptures can be comforting to some people, but it's not the answer. It's not the fix. Always pay attention to mental health. And some things are not curable, but they are treatable and manageable. And in my experience, no amount of faith in any kind of external authority or external being is ever helpful. It's always been science and medicine that's been helpful for me.
I think that hearing your words it's helpful to me. I think it's going to be helpful to a lot of people, especially in the post-Mormon community, because like we all have so many things in common that we're working through, and just trying to be the best parents that we can, trying to undo so much of that harmful information. So thank you so much for highlighting so much of that for us today. And thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for taking this time with me. It's been a long time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's been super validating and therapeutic. It really has, to be able to talk to you. And to anyone who's going to listen to this, thank you for being willing to hear my story. I really appreciate it. It's validating. And I would also encourage everybody, with any opportunity you get, do share your story, because it helps. It helps to talk about these things.
Definitely. Thank you so much.